So welcome everybody to this morning's webinar, well it's afternoon in fact. We've got over 180 delegates with us today from a wide range of backgrounds across NHS estates and public health and other statutory agencies and third sector organisations, both within Scotland and also some participants from further afield from other parts of the UK. My name's Joy Tomlinson. I'm the Director of Public Health in NHS Fife, and I'm going to be chairing this morning's session and handing over, working with a number of speakers. And the session today will be recorded, and after our session, the link is going to be made available via the registration link with other additional resources and contacts. So just for your awareness, there's also no chat function. A lot of you will be used to using Microsoft Teams, but for this particular webinar, there's no chat function, but you can post your questions, and please do, because this is the beginning of a wider conversation about place and how the NHS estate can contribute, and we hope that there's going to be opportunities for us all to follow up afterwards as well. So, the overarching aim of this webinar today is to help us start a conversation that really leads on to new action about how land and buildings within the NHS estate might be used differently to deliver wider health, wellbeing and environmental benefits. And today's webinar has evolved from conversations between people working both within NHS estates and public health and spatial planning, recognising opportunities about how we can work more deliberately with each other. And we will be gathering questions during the session, and there'll be an opportunity for us to talk through those at the end after the speakers have had their moments and really talking us through their areas of experience and understanding about this work. And I'm now going to introduce you to also a thing called the Mentimeter, which is going to appear during the session. Oh, here we are, here's the slide. So there's a QR code for people who can download that on their smartphones, or you can go to the www.menti.com, and that's going to help us gather some information that will describe our audience in full. So you're going to be able to answer a very simple question there about your own background, and we'll be able to present that back to everybody in the call, so you know who else is joining in today, and we can really bring some understanding to all the different contributors. NHS land and estate ownership and management contributes a lot actually to help us meet some of Scotland's key areas of priority. A number of you will be aware, a large portion of the audience today will be aware of Scotland's public health priorities, but perhaps not everybody. There are 6 of these, and the first one focuses on the impact of place on the health and well-being of communities. And another key area of development in recent years has been supporting the development of the NHS and other large organisations in areas around Scotland as anchor organisations, and also our contributions to biodiversity and our response to climate change commitments as well. Anchor organisations are those organisations that are tied to particular places because of either their mission or their histories and physical assets and their local relationships. So the NHS is, by virtue of its very mission, an anchor organisation, and it's increasingly being discussed and taken forward across different boards in Scotland. And our approach to land and to asset management is a real opportunity to directly support the Sustainable Development Goals as well. So as I mentioned there, Scotland's first public health priority is on a focus on place. It describes a Scotland where we live in vibrant, healthy and safe places and communities. And achieving this will also contribute to the other public health priorities as well. The NHS estate is part of the physical spaces used by our community, and having a shared understanding of what healthy and safe places and communities mean in practice is key to achieving this. NHS boards and Public Health Scotland and the Improvement Service and local authorities already are working together to develop shared outcomes, and the NHS estate can contribute to these. And then the second element that I wanted to draw out in this introduction is about NHS anchor institutions. And NHS is an anchor institution which delivers community benefits far beyond provision of care, although that's obviously the element that everybody thinks about first of all. And anchors are described as having 5 pillars. 5 elements where they really have a big contribution, and those are through how they utilise their buildings and spaces to support communities, how they work more closely with local partners, how they reduce environmental impact, and how they widen access to quality work, and how they can purchase more locally to ensure social benefit and also contribute to the public health priorities and local environments. And through working with and within communities, anchor organisations are able to really take forward how they can meet community needs and contribute to placemaking. And a third key point, which NHS estates can potentially really contribute to, is the outdoor estate, which delivers on Scotland's requirements under the biodiversity duty. The NHS is a requirement under that biodiversity duty to maximise its wider environmental benefits, and that through that it helps us to meet our responsibilities outlined in the draft policy on global emergency and sustainable development and the forthcoming strategy. So the webinar today is going to highlight examples from across the NHS estate where good practice and innovation is already happening. And work is already underway with communities to meet individual local needs. And we're going to demonstrate and hear today how these assets are being used and how land is being taken forward for the benefits of our community through employing local people, providing our buildings and our grounds as a community asset, and providing public transport and active travel links. And that through all of these actions, we can make sure that we can deliver health improvements, build community resilience, and develop a green and fairer transition to net zero. And after the conference today, we're going to share references for the organisations who are presenting their work today, and also some policy documents and practical guidance that will help support new place-based working options in each of your own local areas as well. So now I'm going to introduce 2 key people who you're going to be hearing from during the course of the webinar today. And they're going to introduce, first of all, the Scotland's Land Rights and Responsibilities Principles. So I'm introducing, first of all, Kathie Pollard, who is the Policy and Practice Lead with the Scottish Land Commission, and Gemma Campbell, who is our Land Rights and Responsibilities Manager for the Scottish Land Commission. So I will pause there and let them take us through this very first start of the webinar.
Thank you very much, Joy. Thanks for that introduction. Hello, everyone. Yes, just a very brief introduction from myself and Gemma to introduce the Scottish Land Commission and the work that we do and how it links to the wider NHS estate. Next slide, please. So the way we own, use and manage land and assets really matters. About 2/3 of the UK's wealth is actually held up in land, so it's really important that we use it in a way that delivers wider benefits. By doing this, it can help us deliver against the Sustainable Development Goals, Scotland's National Performance Framework, and interestingly, the new Planning Act includes a purpose of planning, which is to manage the development and use of land in the long-term public interest. So there's a direct link there to ensuring that we're the long-term interest is delivering a net zero economy, that we're delivering against the priorities in local places, that we deliver community wealth building approach. So there's lots of wider strategies that it meets, but on a very practical level, next slide please, the way in which land is used, owned and managed can help us deliver a more productive, inclusive and fairer use of land and ownership. And these are our priority areas of work. We've got these 3 work streams at the moment. One is regarding reforming land rights. The second deals with reforming land markets, looking at various tools, including planning and valuation. And the third one is really the one that I think we want to focus on today. It's about accountability and responsibility. And this is where the Scottish Land Rights and Responsibility Statement is really important. And I'll hand over to my colleague Gemma, who will talk us through that.
Thanks, Kathie, and hi everyone. If we can move on to the next slide, please. I'll talk to you a bit about the Land Rights and Responsibility Statement, and it sets out a vision and principles for how we own, use and manage land in Scotland. The statement is the first of its kind anywhere in the world, and it adopts a human rights approach to land rights and responsibilities and signals a determination to lead the way in ensuring that Scotland's urban and rural land contributes to inclusive and sustainable economic growth and to social justice. So the vision is shown on the slide here, and we're going to hear a bit more about the principles as the webinar moves on. But the first of the principles is that the overall framework of land rights, responsibilities and public policies should promote, fulfil and respect relevant human rights in relation to land, should contribute to public interest and well-being and balance public interests. The framework should support sustainable economic development, protect and enhance the environment, help achieve social justice and build a fairer society. So the public sector plays a really important role in this, and the NHS estate can support public health, address inequalities, address climate change, and create better places and benefit communities. At the Commission, we work with landowners across all sectors to help them understand how they can own and manage land in line with the statement and the principles that it sets out. And we do this in a variety of ways through dealing with casework, providing training and workshops. We develop guidance and protocols, and we own practices, and that is something that's absolutely on offer to anyone who's attending here today, and you can follow up with us after the webinar if you're interested in that. And we develop case studies. So today we're going to hear some really fantastic examples from across the NHS estate of so I think I'm moving on now to the next section.
Right, so I think this is where I come in next to introduce this. This first section of the principle of good stewardship, and basically this is really emphasising the importance of care, ongoing care and maintenance and responsibility for our land, for stewardship for the future. That we all, and the NHS is part of this, act as stewards of Scotland's land resource for future generations, and that also then contributes to sustainable growth and the development of our country. So I'm going to hand on to Gemma for the introduction of our speakers for this section, and I'm looking forward to very much hearing about this one.
Okay, so on to the next slide. So the principle of good stewardship in the statement sets out that the holders of land rights should exercise these rights in ways that take account of the responsibilities to meet high standards of land ownership, acting as stewards of Scotland's land resource for future generations. They contribute to sustainable growth and a modern, successful country. So this principle, along with the Commission's associated protocol and guidance that support it, promote good stewardship and high standards of land management. Decisions made with a focus on good stewardship take into consideration the long-term needs of local communities and deliver public benefit of wider national outcomes. Owners, managers and users of land have a really important role to play in shaping and guiding management and change of land in ways that deliver mutual benefits and secure land for future generations. So high standards of land management and good stewardship of land mean promoting the sustainable development of land by contributing to better and more productive economic, social, cultural and environmental outcomes, and in general considering the public good as well as the good of those who own the land. So I am now going to pass you on to Gemma Kitson, the Greenspace and Urban Realm Officer at NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, and then she'll pass on to Dan Jenkins, the Health Promotion Specialist at NHS Highland, and they're going to tell us about work they've been doing in their areas to support good stewardship.
Hiya, thanks very much, Gemma. So I am Gemma Kitson. I'm the Greenspace and Urban Realm Officer NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde and how we're trying to demonstrate good stewardship. Could I have the next slide, please? So I think a good place to start talking about the development of greenspace projects with the greenspace demonstration project, so the Green Exercise Partnership ran, and these were nationwide, but within GG&C they included improvements to existing green spaces at Gart Naval Hospital in particular, and this provided the evidence base for improved and more and more projects have been coming forward since then. There's been so much demand for support with this that the Rural Green Space and Urban Realm Officer was created with match funding from the Green Exercise Partnership, and I took up this post in August, so I'm very excited about it. And hope that we'll see across the state and look at how we can make the most of it. Could I have the next slide, please? So when it comes to improvements to existing green spaces, the sustainability and capital planning teams here have been supporting members of the wider healthcare community who have come forward with ideas. And at the moment we have several projects on site and several which have been delivered already. And some of these have been led by clinical staff directly. And this approach works really well because staff know exactly what they and their patients need, and we can then support them to deliver this. There's also something our colleagues in health improvement are doing. So they're looking to set up a green health partnership for the city, which would aim to increase the availability of green health activities and services and maximise green referral and green care prescribing. And I think these two approaches could work really well together in future, because if we can get the physical projects on the ground, we can then work with health improvement to get people out and using the spaces and link the wider community. And could I have the next slide, please? So I just wanted to talk a bit about the health and wellbeing benefits. So as an example of the physical health benefits that we've seen, we have a project at the Physically Disabled Rehabilitation Unit at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, where one of the physiotherapists is keen to create a green space with paths which could be used by patients to improve their mobility. And going forward, this is the same approach again, where we'll support them to deliver this, but really they're the one who knows what the patients are needing, so they're best placed to advise on it. And during COVID, I think we've all appreciated the wellbeing benefits of green space as well. And as part of the response to COVID, we've been working with the landscape architects LRRS to create halo gardens, which are like small contemplative spaces with planting and seating. And as part of that project, LRRS have been interviewing ICU patients and staff, and some of the feedback that they got was about just being able to look at the window onto greenery for long periods. So we know that just a small intervention can have a big impact. And then beyond patients and staff directly, there's also the opportunity for our green to see the wider community. So at Gart Naval in particular, the green spaces have really been adopted by the surrounding community during the pandemic especially, although this needs to be managed quite sensitively to make sure that their use of the estate doesn't take away from the wellbeing of patients. So at Gart Naval, this has meant there are proposals for native hedgerow planting alongside wards to provide some privacy for patients and staff. And I think this is a great solution that allows everyone to space. So we have a project. Oh, sorry. I'll turn off my camera. I'm having connection issues. Yeah, could I have the next slide, please? So yeah, I wanted to use the example of the master plan proposals at the Queen Elizabeth to explore the opportunities for tackling our climate and ecological goals through green spaces. So this project is at concept design stage, and we're hoping to secure funding to take it forward to detailed design and construction. And the key to this project is improving the outdoor spaces, not only for the benefit of users, but also for biodiversity and to tackle emissions. So native species are being proposed where possible, and there's also improved green and blue infrastructure, including swales and suds, to tackle issues with drainage. And this demonstrates the approach that we'd want to take with all our projects, where we're prioritising not only the wellbeing impacts, but also as much as possible working in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals to deliver as many benefits as possible. It's also more strategic in scale, so rather than delivering little bits and pieces here and there, we're hoping to be able to propose this more strategic scale of improvements across all our sites. Could I have the next slide, please? So the theme of this section of the session is good stewardship, and I just wanted to mention what this means to me in the context of NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. So I see it as a means of us managing our land for the public good, and particularly for those who are most likely to be using it. So in this context, this would mean us managing our land on behalf of the staff, patients and visitors who use it, as well as the wider community. And in a broader sense, I also think it means trying to tackle the climate and ecological emergencies as much as we can. As a landowner, I think we have a responsibility to use this land to offset emissions, particularly since there are unavoidable emissions associated with providing healthcare, like using anaesthetic gases. So I think that anything that we can do with our outdoor estate to combat these emissions would be an example of good stewardship. We're looking to implement tree planting across the estate as part of the Clyde's Climate Forest initiative, and we're exploring options for using land which is currently derelict for this. And I think this is a great example of how we can tackle both our health and climate aspirations in one go. And I think it's the type of approach that we'd like to demonstrate more. So that's just a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of lots of different things that we have going on at the moment, because I couldn't bring myself to just pick one project. So I think, yeah, at the moment we have a really great opportunity to take a more strategic look at our aspirations for green space across the estate and how it can be used to enhance well-being, and I'm really excited to see where we can go with it. So thank you very much. I'm going to pass over to Dan now, I think.
Yeah, thanks very much. Let's wait for the first slide to come up. So my name's Dan Jenkins. I'm Senior Health Improvement Specialist with NHS Highland. And I'm just going to bring a quick kind of 5-minute summary of some of the work we're doing up at New Craigs Hospital in Inverness. Next slide, please. So New Craigs Hospital is on the western outskirts of Inverness. It's the main mental health facility within Highland Health and Social Care Partnership, and it serves the whole of that region. The hospital currently provides residential and outpatient mental health services and a range of other associated services. Within the hospital itself, there are 3 acute admission wards, of which 6 or so beds are allocated for substance misuse detox. There's intensive psychiatric care unit, rehabilitation secure care unit, dementia assessment and treatment ward, a longer stay dementia ward, learning disability assessment and treatment unit, and there are various outpatient clinics that are also held within that hospital site. In addition, several other services are based there, including vocational support, supporting self-management service, eating disorders service, and personality disorders service. So the direct community of New Craigs has a broad range of service users, and of course, kind of all the staff who provide those services. So NHS Highland has also been working for several years in partnership with the Green Exercise Partnership, as mentioned before. This being a joint venture between what was Forestry Commission Scotland and Scottish National Heritage, now Scottish Forestry and Nature Scot, and also Health Scotland, through the Greening the NHS Estates project. And one of the Green Exercise Partnership national demonstration sites was established at New Craigs to showcase that kind of health and well-being benefits that can be gained from that positive investment in and management of NHS estate. So the funding for this project also came from Green Exercise Partnership and from NHS Highland endowments. We had a few additional considerations came into play as a result of this site being subject to PFI arrangement, but happily the work continues as intended. So prior to its recent development, New Craigs campus offered great potential, but very little real opportunity for staff and patients and visitors and local residents to explore its environment. Next slide, please. So prior to the work with Green Exercise Partnership, this was typical of how a lot of the site was presented. So a bit of a green desert, a lot of kind of short cut grass, flat top hedges, and nothing particularly kind of inspiring or interesting. Next slide, please. So the project has enhanced several areas of the site, including improvements to path accessibility and signage in several parts of the site, also inspiring other local walks, an extensive multi-use village green space, and a specialist dementia garden attached to our kind of long-stay dementia ward. We try to make the best of opportunities to change the fundamental feel of the site from that short cut grass everywhere to embracing things like wildflowers and the more natural habitats for biodiversity, to encourage not only interest but also kind of local wildlife opportunities, and more kind of natural habitats for biodiversity, and also to be able to make use of that for therapeutic activities, kind of whether it's connected to ward-based stuff or kind of more out and about. Things like signage and waymarking to try and create a bit of a sense of identity. Of course, and mostly permission to enjoy the grounds, that sense of permission that this is a place we're supposed to go, and also running specific therapeutic programs has made a really good use of the space that we have and brought great benefit to patients. But as in any green infrastructure project, however maintenance minimizing we might want to make those designs, there's always a consideration of how that maintenance might be taken forward. And in a PFI site where long established and very tight budget maintenance schedules are well set, some significant adjustments to those can be costly. Next slide, please. So in consultation with Robertson's Facility Management, who have that PFI maintenance contract, we also developed a partnership with a local branch of Apex Scotland. For those who know, Apex is a specialist organisation which for over 25 years has contributed to a safer Scotland by working with people with criminal convictions or at risk of committing offences to give them the necessary skills to change their behaviour and lead fulfilling lives. And they've got an extensive experience of outdoor maintenance projects in and around Inverness localities, including various local authority sites. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we identified the specific areas across the site that had been improved through the Green Exercise Partnership and Endowment investment, and we negotiated with Robertsons to pass back certain areas to NHS Highland and Apex for maintenance. And this is a great kind of win-win arrangement because Apex have now established an additional skills programme for their more experienced volunteers who are maybe further along their journey towards stability, employability and confidence building. And it does bring a more affordable option to keep those areas ticking over while the PFI arrangement with Robertsons is still in place. Next slide, please. But the real distinguishing element of this, and the angle I suppose I want to emphasise today, is the way it brings the additional connection and meaning to recovery journeys. The fact is that the majority of the crew from Apex have at some time come into contact with services at New Craigs. And there's a significant and often highlighted sense of that giving something back, of improving the environment for others using the services there. And this comes through in the dedication that the crew give to some pretty arduous tasks. It also provides a unique opportunity for role modelling, where current patients at New Craigs can see people who have succeeded in their journey of recovery and know it's possible. So in terms of community wellbeing, this initiative provides connection, provides hope, provides inspiration. It also supports reintegration into wider community participation, and we're really happy with what it achieves on many levels. The sense of participation, the sense of kind of inclusion and enthusiasm really kind of comes across. And yeah, kind of delighted that bit of partnership working really enhances the community connection of the investment that we've given on the site. That's me.
Thank
you. I
you.
think I'm handing back to Joy.
Yes, you are indeed. Thank you very much. And really interesting just having these examples from around the country. And I want to go visit instantly to get a better look at things on the ground. Thank you very much. So the next principle that we're going to cover now is really community engagement, and that there should be greater collaboration and community engagement about decisions around our land. That's one of the underlying principles with the Scottish Land Rights and Responsibilities Principle. So next person I'm going to hand over to, I hope, is Gemma, who's having a few problems with sound, to introduce our next speaker. So Gemma, over to you, I hope.
Thanks, Joy. Hopefully it's just the image that's missing and the sound is okay now. So as you said, the community engagement principle is that if we move to the next slide, is that there should be greater collaboration and community engagement in decisions about land. So this is a principle that is supported by the Scottish Government's guidance on engaging communities in decision relating to land, and it was the subject of our very first protocol back at the beginning of 2019. And we also have a lot of guidance and templates that we use when we work with landowners to support them with putting this this principle into practice. So we know a bit about what good engagement looks like, and really community engagement is about getting to know your community. It's about starting early, particularly if you have big plans and things that will have a significant impact on them. And it's about taking time and listening to them, including a good range of views, ensuring that you speak to a wide range of people, and about explaining the wider benefits of what you're doing. Ultimately, it is about good communication. And the benefits of genuine and effective community engagement and doing it well is that it really helps to build trust and relationships between those who own and who are managing land, and communities and others with interest in land. It helps to build really positive and cooperative relationships and help foster mutual understanding. You know, it can be an opportunity to inform and explain, and to gain really valuable feedback and input that can help with creative and innovative solutions to issues that you're facing. It secures a better economic, environmental, social and cultural outcomes really for all parties. And we have done some research on early engagement, and we know that, you know, starting things earlier, building that relationship up and having that in place can really help improve the quality of development. It can help you iron out problems at a really early stage. It can speed up processes, particularly with larger developments, and it really helps build up that trust and that sense of community. So I'm now going to hand over to Elaine McClure, Portfolio Programme Manager at NHS Ayrshire and Arran, who will tell us about engagement that they've been carrying out at Woodland View Hospital.
Thank you for inviting me to present today on Woodland View, our acute mental health and community hospital, which is situated in Ayrshire Central Estate in North Ayrshire. And my presentation today will focus on Woodland View and the benefits and added value of community engagement that were realised. Next slide, please. So what were the origins of this project? So NHS Ayrshire and Arran initiated a strategic review of mental health services in November 2006. And this review was designed to modernise and develop local mental health services. And the photo shows just what our services were like in terms of bedded wards, limited outdoor space, dark oppressive corridors and surroundings. And from the start, we involved surface users, patients and staff in the development to improve the quality for our future services. A recurring theme in our engagement was access to outdoor green space for both patients and family. Next slide, please. So through an option appraisal process, the preferred site was Ayrshire Central Hospital, which was a green open site on the outskirts of Irvine, and that's illustrated on the top left corner of the photo. The land was already owned by NHS Ayrshire and Arran, and the former pavilions, which were situated at the centre of the hospital site, were demolished to provide the development site. The official start of construction was August 2014, and the photos illustrate what was actually built by summer 2016. Outdoor space, a bright cafe area, spacious ensuite bedrooms and ward areas. And Woodland View is a 206-bedded integrated mental health and community hospital that brings together a full range of inpatients and also outpatient facilities. Centralises inpatient adult mental health services on one site and provides treatment and rehabilitation facilities. And this project was a Scottish non-profit distributing model, which involves design, finance, construction and operation for a 25-year concession period. Next slide, please. As part of the statutory approvals process, we undertook extensive community engagement. This involved holding roadshows not only in Irvine but across Ayrshire, and the roadshows featured the aspect of place, which involved articulating the purpose of the building and the service it would offer to local neighbours and communities, and this really helped to allay any fears of the local communities. The ultimate aim for Woodland View was to be seen as not only serving the local community, but the whole of Ayrshire, and we wanted it to provide a friendly environment for both patients and staff, and somewhere that promotes wellbeing and high quality professional care and is not seen to sit separately within the community. And the construction of the development provided much needed economic benefits and employment opportunities for the local area. Ayrshire has a well-established community wealth building commitment, and we are signed up to the charter that fits with this project. Next slide, please. We were particularly keen to ensure that community benefit opportunities were maximised and written into the contract. The local economic benefit proposal exceeded the Scottish Government targets at the time, and the targets included 18 apprenticeships, we had 2 graduate opportunities during construction, we had over 126 work placement opportunities for young people. We also provided job opportunities to former patients, and that was in the cafe or the reception desk or in the volunteer shop. And overall, Woodland View directly or indirectly created approximately 192 jobs during the construction phase, with more opportunities when the hospital was operational. 50%, that's 50% of project spend was within 30 miles of the hospital in North Ayrshire, and there was an 80% spend target within Scotland. As well as that, the contractor Balfour Beatty also provided over 300 days of staff support for the Scottish Association of Mental Health clients over the lifetime of the project. Next slide, please. So here we have just some illustrations of what I've summarised there. The employment graduate here is local Edward Spence, recruited into the project team. He was born and brought up and went to school in Irvine, and he was very pleased to be able to contribute to his local community. The contractor also undertook a number of charity sponsorships during the construction phase, and the photo illustrates that at the bottom left. We also engaged with local schools, and the school children from Castle Park Primary in Irvine helped to brighten up the site hoarding around the construction site. The contractor went into the school to speak to the youngsters about the dangers of playing at construction sites, and then the youngsters were tasked with creating artistic drawings to help reinforce the safety messages. The overall winner got a bicycle, and the youngsters and their families were invited to a special event on the site where they got to see their artwork displayed full size on the hoarding. This project not only was fun for the young people, but it also was an important element of reinforcing the safety messages of not playing at construction sites. Other benefits were local charity gardens were revamped with the support of the contractors. Materials were also supplied to local schools, including topsoil and pallets for outdoor play. And there was a local, one business locally that I'd like to highlight was Kilmarnock-based Work Smart Interiors, and they supplied the internal architectural glazing screens within each ward and public area, illustrated on the right-hand photo. There was more than 500 pieces of glass installed. We also undertook an extensive naming of the facility consultation, where we had over 130 possible names, yes, over 130 that were suggested, and we had our public reference group and staff members review the list, and we then consulted, and we had over 2,000 people, members of the public and staff, voted on the name, and Woodland View received the most votes with 790 in total. And I think it's important to just emphasise that every community benefit, these are only a small selection, that was undertaken increased the profile of the development, illustrated the local investment that was also being realised in Ayrshire. Next slide, please. So I also want to mention the NHS estate that accompanied the build. The work has opened up green space to local residents to use. This has augmented the physical and mental well-being for the local community, as well as our patients and staff, and it brings a real additionality to the local area. We have a new cycle path that means cyclists can leave the hospital grounds and link to the national cycle network. So to summarise, Woodland View is a tremendous facility for the people of Ayrshire. Not only does it provide state-of-the-art surroundings for patients, staff and service users, it also provides a place for the local community to come, and members of the public can visit our Bramble Cafe, and they do so regularly, excellent barista coffees. They can buy their newspapers in the morning, and they can really make point of the mental health and well-being areas. Sorry, my machine has just locked, so I'm just going to have to take one moment, but we're just going to go on to the next slide, please. So to summarise, finally, a few key learning points. Start early when you're planning your project and consider the community benefits and engage and involve all stakeholders in the development of these, and write the specific community benefits into the procurement tender. Whatever name you put out to public consultation, be very sure that you like all the options. We don't want another McBoaty face or whatever it was. Nothing should be off the table. There are no silly ideas about community benefits. Gather as many ideas that you can at the start. We certainly didn't think we would have a cycle track through our hospital. And be clear who your stakeholders are. Make sure that you regularly engage with them on what they're interested in. And fundamentally, the real success of any project is the legacy of community and benefits realised. This award-winning facility provides this lasting legacy and has and will continue to improve people's well-being, as well as provide economic and physical environmental opportunities. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Elaine, and just fantastic hearing that engagement, and having walked around Woodland View. It is a beautiful site. The end results, yeah, it's a very positive estate altogether. Okay, so the next theme that I'm going to introduce now, in the next principle, is moving us on to transparency. And there is a recognition in the principles of just some of the challenges that people have about understanding ownership, about the use and management of land, and that it should be, the aspiration should be that this is publicly available and clear and have sufficient detail. So I'm going to hand over to Gemma now to talk through that and introduce our next speaker.
Thanks, Joy. So we move on to my slide on transparency. You can see here that the statement set out that there should be improved transparency of information about the ownership, use and management of land, and that this should be publicly available and contain clear and relevant details. It has been recognised that a lack of transparency about land and ownership and land use decision making is a barrier to dialogue and progress. Information about land and buildings provides the foundation for open and transparent decision making, and can enable greater participation, which is a key element of the human rights framework and particularly important for community well-being. People really need to know who to speak to and what's happening with land and buildings near them, and they need to have trust and information about the decision-making processes and how they can be involved in those. Clarity about land ownership and use benefits everyone. Better information in both urban and rural environments can help with more informed and better decision-making, more efficient land use and management, and it can create benefits for the local economy, environment and society. We're now going to hear from hear about the NHS Lothian land audit from Ian Mackenzie, the Green Health Programme Manager at NHS Lothian. So I will hand over to Andrea, who will start the video on this.
Hello, I'm Ian Mackenzie. I'm the Greenspace and Health Programme Manager for NHS Lothian. Today I'm going to talk to you a bit about how we've been using data to inform and communicate the benefits of the NHS estate in Lothian. And to do this, we've been using a natural capital approach. Now, NHS Lothian has recognised the role it can play in a green recovery, and during COVID, I think lots of people had a really kind of strong sense and affiliation to their local green spaces. And what we've done as a board is recognise the natural assets that the board has. There's some really strong policy drivers behind this work. First of all is the move towards net zero. So thinking about the outdoor estate, thinking about the whole of over 120 sites NHS Lothian has, how can those help us deliver against the Climate Change Scotland Act? Secondly, how are we able to deliver against the UN sustainability goals, and how as a board are we actually fulfilling our biodiversity duty? So every public body in Scotland has a duty to improve biodiversity. How is our board doing that? And finally, this work contributes to the sustainable development framework that the board has created in the past year or so, and our green space strategic framework. So that sets the context for why we're so interested in the outdoor estate and why we need to know more information about it. So the first step is really, well, what is our outdoor estate? How does it help? How does it benefit? And to do this, we've used a natural capital approach. And that is thinking about the trees, grassland, green spaces that make up the estate, and then thinking about the benefits that we derive from that. So these areas capture carbon, they help clean the air, they help provide health and wellbeing benefits. But how do we actually start to account for that in a system that traditionally has looked at square meters of buildings and the monetary value? Natural capital starts to let you put some hard numbers on these things and actually provide data to people about the benefits. So that is our approach that we've taken. And to do that, what we needed to first do was to do an assessment. And this assessment built first a spatial register, so a GIS map of the whole estate. For lots of areas, we didn't necessarily have detailed land cover information, but we were able to estimate it from different sources, and then build on top of that the area of woodland, trees, different habitat types. And once we have that register, we were able to then use it to calculate different metrics. So the first thing that we did was we calculated a very simple biodiversity metric. And that allowed us to say, across all of these sites, we have a biodiversity value of X. The second thing we did was we looked at the carbon and air quality assessment. So that allowed us to calculate the tons of carbon dioxide that had been sequestered across all those woodlands and trees, and the air quality improvement that was being provided by the shrubs, bushes and trees. And interestingly, you can also start to put monetary values on those. So we're able to use those to connect into our finance colleagues. And the final assessment that we did was to look at some of those health and wellbeing benefits that are derived on the estate. And we looked very specifically in this first assessment to those benefits provided to NHS patients and staff. So we've started to look at things like quality adjusted life years and look at case studies of how people benefited from the estate. And that built up a kind of a broad picture of our estate, and we published that in a report earlier this year. And the results have been really interesting. And these are the results for the overall estate. It starts to show you the area of green space that we've got, the type and the condition of that green space, and then the tons of carbon and air quality improvement. And these results, as I said, we've communicated them in a report, we've published that online, we've made the data and the maps behind that available for key sites. And now we're starting to communicate that with individuals and groups and thinking about who our stakeholders are. Within Lothian, there's over 26,000 staff. Obviously, there's a lot of internal stakeholders, and we've been using this report and maps such as this at the Western General to speak to master planning groups and site management groups about the green space and biodiversity. But we've also been using this information to communicate with the public as well. So we have been able to use this to talk to local community groups, local interest groups, other people that are interested in the estate as an asset. And our next steps really are to take this information. It's published in reports online. I'll share the links in a moment, or I'll share the links after the meeting. But now we want to create a online digital map of this, both for people internally to use so they can understand more about biodiversity on the estate, but also for external stakeholders as well. I think finally, one of the really positive things that's come out of this piece of work is by making it available publicly and by publishing it and being very transparent with the information, it's generated much more interest than if we just reported it through committees and the governance structure. I think it's really started to set people's imaginations going about what this type of information, what this type of approach can be used for. So thank you very much. And if anybody's got any questions, I look forward to joining you for the discussion later on. And please feel free to contact me.
There we go. So thank you very much, and we do hope Ian will be joining us for the Q&A at 3. And at the moment we are going to give you, we've run over time just a little bit, but I do think it's really important for people to stand up and stretch their legs. So we're going to give precisely 1 minute of downtime for people to all stand up, move around, and then we'll restart again. So I'll go quiet just now for 1 minute. Okay then. So I think we're just going to gather people back. Some folks are still probably just about to come back to join us. So just before we start to introduce the next session, could I encourage everybody who's listening at the moment to the presenters to consider questions that are coming into your mind so that we can gather these together for the Q&A session a little bit later. And we're now going into this final section of the final principle that we really wanted to highlight during the webinar today about diversification and community ownership. And one of the key elements in the land statement is really about the contribution to public interest and well-being and the benefits that would come from greater diversity of ownership of our land, and that people would have opportunities to access and lease land as well for the future. So I'm going to hand over at this point again to Gemma.
Thanks, Joy. So if we move on to the first slide here, I'll talk a bit about diversification and then about community ownership. So the principle on diversification states that there should be a more diverse pattern of land ownership and tenure with more opportunities for citizens to own, lease and have access to land. So why is diversification important? Well, really, a wide and diverse availability of land and buildings allows businesses, organisations, individuals and communities to pursue projects of all kinds of scales and purposes. Offering more people the opportunity to own and lease land can also contribute to a fairer Scotland and enables more people to enjoy the land rights and responsibilities that go with it. Diversifying ownership and tenure can have benefits for owners of land too. It's a way to contribute to a more diversified asset base and manage risk. It can generate funds to reinvest elsewhere, improve public profiles and relationships with communities, and also provide additional opportunities for innovation and collaboration. So we move on to the next slide, we'll see that the idea of diversification links very, very closely to Principle 3, which is that more communities should have the opportunity to own, lease or use buildings and land, which can contribute to their community's well-being and future development. So community organisations can really help to deliver benefits in rural and in urban areas through ownership and through use of assets. Community ownership can support well-being and resilience by giving people the opportunity to identify and respond to their own needs. It can offer communities a chance to contribute in a lot of different ways, and they do through community ownership by providing local housing, creating businesses, developing community facilities, creating recreation facilities and amenity spaces, accessing and managing green space, and having control over other facilities and services that benefit them. There are a few different routes that communities can follow to take on land. So there are community rights to buy, including rights to buy abandoned, neglected and detrimental assets and to buy land for sustainable development. They can go through a negotiated transfer route. And they've also got opportunities through community empowerment through a participation request or through a community asset transfer. So we're now going to hear from a community working towards the asset transfer of a former hospital in Forres. So I'm going to hand you over to Professor Marianne Nicholson, who is trustee of the group and locum consultant medical oncologist at NHS Highland.
Hello, thank you very much indeed for the introduction, and I'm delighted to speak on behalf of the trustees of Leanchoil about our project, about which we are very excited, although it is a challenge. May I have the next slide, please? The background to Leanchoil is that it was built and donated to Forres and the community by a local benefactor. He started life as Donald Smith in Forres but became Lord Strathcona. And he built and paid for the hospital to be built, helped by the community in 1892. Now, Leanchoil, many people were born in Leanchoil locally, and Forres, for your information, is situated about 2 hours west of Aberdeen and about 40 minutes, 1 hour east of Inverness. So it's in the middle of the north of Scotland there. Leanchoil functioned very much as a popular GP-run hospital where everything was offered. Many people had their tonsils out there, children were born there, there was acute medicine, palliative care and respite provision. However, as happens in many community hospitals, we were unable, or the NHS was unable, to keep Leanchoil open because staffing the hospital proved too much of a problem. And with Leanchoil having been passed over to the NHS in 1948, NHS Grampian decided, because of cost and staffing problems, to close the hospital in 2018. However, 2 local community councillors and businessmen decided that this was not good enough, and they proposed a rescue for the benefit of the local community, and the Leanchoil Trust was formed at that time. Next slide, please. So the plan was that we should apply to NHS Grampian to achieve a community asset transfer, that we should build partnerships with local organisations to deliver on needs as identified by the local NHS professionals and, very importantly, the community. We wanted also to establish mutual benefits with a third sector partner, and Erskine were interested in having a Veterans Activity Centre in the north of Scotland, since we do have RAF, Army and other armed forces partners here who were interested in having links with Leanchoil, and Erskine are therefore key to the success of our development also. We wanted to provide wellbeing services for all age groups within the local community in order that we could pull lots of people together. Next slide, please. So following a public consultation in June 2019, there was then parallel discussion opened with NHS Grampian, and I would just like to mention Jerry Donald, the estates manager there, who has been enormously helpful and supportive of the project. Discussions are ongoing with Erskine, the Forres Community Council and also building partners. We have to ensure that the CAT, the Community Asset Transfer, meets the criteria to satisfy the NHS and also the government. But of course there are challenges. The time frame seems to be very long indeed. Here we are at the end of 2021, and even allowing for delays that have been resulting from COVID, it is taking a long time to get everything organised and all our proverbial ducks in a row. We also have to call on experience of other people, because every time a question is asked and we need further information, it is like a Pandora's box where there are further evidence that needs to be obtained, and that takes time and expertise, and therefore we need to pull in other people to help us with this. The confidentiality is important, certainly initially in the project, and therefore we have that tension between maintaining confidentiality and ensuring discussions with the community so that they are involved and know what is happening with their local hospital. The funding, I don't need to say more about that. It's difficult to find cash anywhere these days, and that probably is not going to change. However, the benefits of the CAT are that it enforces us to clarify the aims of our project, and that has got to be dynamic. And we have refined initial plans so that what we believe we can finally deliver will be a benefit for many people locally and beyond. Next slide, please. So what will Leanchoil deliver? We aim to have, amongst other things, clinical spaces with modern facilities and very good IT, so that we can stop people from having to travel that 4-hour round trip to Aberdeen if they need to see a consultant, whether it be rheumatology, dermatology, oncology, any of the other specialties. And equally, if people go to Inverness, it saves the travel that they have to go. As a clinician in Aberdeen, I always felt embarrassed because I was born here and I knew that my patients were driving for 2 hours, often with relatives who'd taken a day off to travel with them. And then they would wait for about an hour to see me in clinic for probably about 20 minutes and then drive 2 hours home again. So if we can have efficient remote consultations, it's better for the patients and of course it's better for the environment as well. We hope to be able to deliver locally prehabilitation services, so physiotherapy, dietary services, occupational therapy, everything else that we need to be able to make sure that our patients who may have to go to Aberdeen or Inverness for surgery or other facilities are fit by the time they get there. We also are in close contact with primary care because clearly we want to be able to deliver with our general practitioners the things that they might not have space for within the primary care facility. Therefore, close contact and communication with them has been a key part of what we're doing. We have space for third sector partners to meet with clients also. And of course, we need to maintain confidentiality in that. We will need to provide transport for that. And therefore, there will be a bus circulating round for us to bring people up so that they can meet whoever they need to. And the 10-acre site has a fantastic facility for the outdoor projects that we heard spoken about so eloquently earlier on by the green health activity when Gemma was speaking. So therefore, with gardening, with the woodland being used and linking in with other charities such as Wild Things in the local area, we believe that social prescribing can become a reality with all the mental health and physical benefits that that can result in. There will be a central social cafe, and we will hope that volunteers from the school doing their Duke of Edinburgh Award will be able to participate, and of course there'll be opportunities for employment as well. We will have close links with the veterans who live in or attend Erskine so that there can be shared facilities, and any perceived barriers between different parts of our community will be able to be broken down. Next slide, please. So in terms of advice to others, we are not there yet. It's taking some time, but we have a great 8-person strong committee plus a development officer, all of whom are working very hard. We are planning well ahead for an opening that we hope will be in around 2025. You have to communicate with all parties right from the start and communicate often enough to keep them on board for the forward planning, but not to annoy them so that they're talking about something or having to think about something that is far into the future. We need flexibility and we have built that into our programme. We have had some setbacks and obviously people have to prepare for those, but really accept these challenges and build a better programme as you deal with the challenges. We have an established and experienced optimistic board. Heaven knows optimism is required, but we all have real passion for this project and we know that it will be realised because we believe in it, and we will be persistent and we will be able to achieve what we can for the community of Forres. I'm very happy to take any questions at all, and thank you very much for your attention. I'm handing back now.
Yes, thank you very much. My goodness. And what an amazing range of examples of different parts of Scotland, different types of work underway, really demonstrating just how the potential exists for us to learn from each other and also to build on work that's already ongoing. And again, just it resonates very strongly that the underlying directions of travel, the public health priorities, anchor organisations, and the sustainability biodiversity duties also are pulling us in the one direction to make best use of our NHS estates and to support change and better engagement for the future. So we've had a range of questions during all of these presenters giving us an overview, and I think at this point the ones that strike me most is actually just a desire to be involved. There's a desire from people, community members, third sector organisations, to be part of the conversation. That's coming through quite strongly, and I wonder if, first of all, I've written down here just the first ones that came in. How does a community trust engage with the NHS constructively? And also that was a question from a particular Lothian slant, but at the same time asking, there were other questions that came in about how does the NHS engage with groups who maybe aren't necessarily seen as their allies as well. So how do we build these community links between the NHS and with particular groups in our communities as well? And I think these questions particularly were directed for Ian Mackenzie, if he's here to join us, to think about because of the Lothian link, but also Gemma and Marianne, based on your understanding of that community asset transfer. So I think this is a Gemma, Ian and Marianne one about really working with local community groups.
I'm happy to start with that if you would like. I think that the Leanchoil project was actually initiated by local people. So they knew they wanted to use the hospital. They knew they wanted to maintain the building, modernise it and use it for the community. And the community were very, very quick to engage at that meeting in 2019. So that was very positive. And then, having discussed with NHS Campion and found Derry Donald on the property side, really this will be the first CAT that NHS Campion have done, but it's a working together and learning together project with everyone engaged. I can't give any more specific answer than that, but Ian probably can.
And Ian may not be quite with us just yet. And just to clarify the first question there, we've got two Gemmas, of course, which I forgot. And it was it's Gemma Kitson. There was a particular question just wondering about, you know, the if there's an equivalence in your role in Greater Glasgow and Clyde and other NHS board areas. And that's actually, it's a really good question because a lot of people won't be aware of that. So Gemma, if you're still on the call, would you mind just giving a wee bit of a description of your role and perhaps links between boards as well?
Yeah, of course. Thanks very much, Joy. So yeah, as far as I'm aware, I think I mentioned in my presentation, I've only been here about 5 weeks now, so I'm brand new to this role, but it's really exciting and an exciting opportunity. So basically how this role is about is the sustainability team within NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde have been managing a lot of green space projects so far across the state, but you know, as we all know, sustainability is a very broad topic, and you know, there was just so much green space stuff coming forwards that they approached the Green Exercise Partnership and the Greater Glasgow and Clyde's board, and funding has been provided from both of those to match funding to support this role. So I think I'm not sure, to be honest, about equivalences between other health boards, but I would imagine for to start off with, I know that his role is a bit more strategic than mine. I think it's more strategic in nature, whereas I'm focused on sort of getting the projects on the ground at the moment. But I think Ian would be a good person to talk to for that person who's asking the question about Lothian.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Gemma. And that's I'd instantly forgotten 5 weeks in, and my goodness, welcome to your contribution today. And it was just really good to hear about the diversity of approaches that are happening on the ground in Greater Glasgow and Clyde. I think, you know, the engagement element is interesting, just about how we have these conversations and make sure we're speaking to our community. But I'm going to move us on to, it's a difficult one to answer in the round, because actually we have a range of different board estates, different actually configurations as well, and it will depend on the circumstances. And I think one of the resources that maybe we do need to put in place, just looking at the comments that are coming from people, is perhaps a signposting, so that it's easy for people to understand how to navigate and make links and have conversations with the right people in their own areas. So that's maybe something that we might want to take back to the group organising today's event. And then the next question that came through quite strongly, I'm going to just do a heads up for Daniel here, because there was a couple here that were particularly really things that I think you'll be well placed to help us with. One was about how do you ensure green space is incorporated as part of a strategic brief for a project, given that we know that often it's the externals, the landscaping, that might be the first bit to get reduced if there's a financial envelope challenge for costs. So Daniel, how do you make sure, for just some practical advice for people, how do they make sure that protect that green space in strategic briefs when projects are being put together?
Yeah, that is a real challenge, because I think just the way that financing of major projects like hospital builds kind of happen, and all those kind of procurement and contracting processes it tends to kind of potentially sideline it. So certainly developing really strong relationships with estates, and being kind of, I mean, I come from public health, but really trying to build those relationships within estates to be part of the conversations as early on in hospital designs. And even things like, I mean, I could track a number of kind of projects and kind of hospital builds in the time that I've been in NHS Highland, where I think lots of opportunities were missed, and then we're getting better and better. It's a bit of an evolutionary process, but I think the recognition of the impact of the outdoor environment as a fundamental part of the function of what a hospital provides is increasing its profile. And we have some very positive relationships kind of with our kind of estates and project planning teams, and it's a matter of just kind of keeping it on the agenda, and where there are restrictions and value engineering moments to be done, it's around constantly reminding people what the point of that whole service is there for, and the range of kind of users and long-term kind of picture. Again, when you're dealing with very immediate kind of bricks and mortar, the longer public health visions can be difficult sometimes to keep hold of. So it's really, for me, maintaining those really close relationships between public health and estates for that one.
Thank you. And there was also another follow-up question, well, I grouped them together anyway, for yourself, Daniel, about how did you identify the needs of community patients and find the right partners to work with? Yeah,
so I guess we've had a constant kind of service user and kind of ward staff and management constantly through the process of the kind of steering group of developing that green space improvements from, you know, prior to when it was started. So kind of making sure that those structures are in place and maintained, because those are also quite variable. Even things like the varying management structures within a hospital, it's about how you kind of maintain that thread, and we're lucky to have a relative new kind of service user and care experience group that continues that involvement. So it's about having those structures that continue to involve kind of service users, patients and ward staff to the best level that we can. In terms of kind of linking with partners to work with, some of that is also involved in that kind of wider kind of experiential consultation and conversation process, but it's also a bit of a mix of local knowledge. You'll have a sense of what's around you locally, because it's hugely variable, and knowing that and having a real kind of sense of affinity of the common aims of where we're going with the kind of aims of improving particularly kind of mental health and well-being through green space, and all the work that kind of Apex, for example, are doing in terms of supporting people's journey and the synergy between the concept of kind of recovery journey and how important that is for current users, ex-users, and people who can contribute back. So it's looking at that kind of synergy of goals and outcomes, as well as a mix of local knowledge.
Thanks very much. And Daniel, you're off the hook now. Kathie wants to come in with a comment just now. Kathie.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm so glad you mentioned common aims. I think that's something I wanted to pick up on earlier with that question about how do we engage with communities, and Gemma Campbell can come in as well and perhaps support me on this. But I think it's really important to provide some practical tools to help with this early engagement. I mean, Elaine talked earlier about the value of engaging really early on in decision making. And I think it's really important to have a range of tools such as the place standard, which helps identify needs and priorities within a community, and actually have those conversations between health boards, the estates and community groups through forums such as the ones that Dan mentioned. The Land Commission is also in your resource toolkit that will be provided today, has included some guidance on how to sort of approach engagement, and I think that goes two ways. You know, it's about having those conversations and working out priorities and needs, and getting everyone around the table. Gemma, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Thanks, Kathie. Yeah, I think there are a couple of points in the community engagement there, talking about what you do when things aren't so great, and I think that's why we say that early engagement is the way to go. If you can have that engagement and have that relationship built up before something goes wrong or before something big is happening, then it's really, really helpful. If you're past that point, I think getting everyone to agree to how they're going to interact, like Kathie said, identifying those common aims and coming to it kind of in an open and honest way, and putting any past issues behind you can kind of help you to get through those. And in some circumstances it might be that you need a neutral party to facilitate, you need some support there, but there is a lot of support available, particularly on the community side. Thank you, Kathie and Gemma, for that. I think it's such a live area, and in some ways, you know, I'm noting the chat is getting very lively now, and it's actually quite difficult to read through all of the comments because people are coming up with other reflections as we're talking as well, which is really good to see. I'm going to also say thank you very much to contributors in the chat, where it sounds like almost another whole series of questions are coming up, but you know, clearly Colin Cooper in particular, you've been trying to give us back some very specific suggestions about things that we might, as a NHS people and as people who are involved in land more generally, might not be aware of. So that there are also other organisations such as Seeds of Hope that you've mentioned, where you might be able to access native flowers and seeds from other sources that perhaps are not first on the hit list of places that we would generally go. So I think it just again demonstrates, as I'm seeing these comments coming through, just how much interest there is in contributing to the NHS estate and to thinking about, well, what can we do differently? And that's very, very welcome. And there's also some interesting comments about perhaps some of the land audit information and thinking about how that might be used. That was a very specific question for Ian as well. A very thoughtful comment there, because obviously that's been a huge amount of work that's been carried out, and puts that NHS board in a very strong position to make some decisions about the use of their estate. But at the moment, I don't have the answer for that one, but that's perhaps for a future forum of discussion under the NHS sustainability strategy, which is being developed at the moment. So I can see one of the organising team, Ali McDonald, is just reflecting that that's something that might be for a future consultation discussion as well.
David Meehan, I see you've commented from Ayrshire and Arran, and really good to have you on the call as well with that third sector experience of building projects within the NHS. And just, I absolutely agree with you about the length of time and commitment it takes really to make a project come to reality and to integrate both strategy and policy. So very practical experience from those who are actually listening to our call as well, that I know we would all benefit from having more opportunities to share our learning across all boards in Scotland too. And I wonder if there are any other particular, we're coming towards the end here, so I'm just thinking, Kathie and Gemma, are there any other questions that have really jumped out at you from the Q&A that you want to make sure I don't miss, because they are coming in thick and fast?
Yeah, I think there was an interesting point made about how, so I've lost it. It's so lively, but I think there's a question about incorporating new ideas and sort of how do you embed this approach in the way, for example, GPs prescribe green health, and how do you link it back to the day-to-day business of the NHS? And I was actually struck by what Elaine was saying about embedding the benefits in a contract, and I just wondered whether the panel had an idea around how we can ensure that the way the estate is used is embedded in sort of mechanisms such as contracts. Are there other ways of ensuring that you're sort of locking in and harnessing those benefits? Does that make sense?
So yeah, I think, I'm not sure who might be best placed to answer that one. Daniel, is this something that, or maybe Marianne, I think, you know, you've been describing more specific projects, and maybe actually also Elaine, yeah, in terms of how you build things in. And at the outset with Woodland View, Elaine, maybe I'll pick on you first. How did you build things in from the outset to make sure that you realise the full potential?
Thanks, Joy. So we put it in the contract. We looked at what other organisations were doing. We learned from other NHS boards, and we physically put it in the contract. We also asked for the contractors who were tendering for it to come up with their own ideas, and we scored that within the weighting when we were about to appoint at the preferred bidder stage. So, you know, learn from others, I would say.
That's really helpful. And just as a matter of interest, that scoring mechanism, you know, is that something that could be shared with others if they happen to be reaching that stage? Just the principles. Yeah, absolutely. It was a framework that we used. So yeah, Health Facility Scotland will be able to provide anything, or people can contact me directly. Happy to provide further information. It was a few years ago, you'll appreciate. But yeah, no, we've got that. It was very thorough and important to us that we got it right in the contract, and we got a fantastic facility. So that just shows it. And just, there was one final question. I mean, our NHS estates are not fixed things, just as Marianne's been describing. Things change over time, and yet we have these grounds which might need to be repurposed. And is there work across, is anybody aware of a learning forum when sites have to be repurposed, or there's a thought about buildings perhaps needing to come down and the land being used in a different way? Is there a forum where boards are allowed to share information about how they approach that and how they take those conversations forward with their community? That's maybe a question for everybody, but maybe Marianne particularly, because you've just been working through it.
Yes, I don't think, to my knowledge, there is nothing that's specific there right now. But even using a forum like this, I think when we look at the number of people participating, it's a learning exercise for so many different people. And that may be something that will come to the fore. This has been a community-driven and a community council-driven project from Leanchoil and Forres. We've been lucky with the buy-in that we've had from NHS Grampian. There may be further bumps in the road that we will find defined as yet, and therefore whatever other information can be gained from a forum such as this, we will tap into it as readily as anyone else.
Thank you very much. I see, Kathie, you've put your hand up. I've also been told I have a 2-minute warning.
I'll be quick. I'll be quick. Just to say, there's a lot of good practice examples of making sure that vacant sites are being reused. If you've got a plan in place, proactive estate management practices are really encouraged to look at, well, if you're changing sites, if you're looking to relocate, what are you doing with that property to ensure that it doesn't actually harm and blight the community? There's the Stored Spaces initiative, that a great example in Glasgow of community coming in, using a site temporarily, leading to wider benefits. So I would encourage you to look at the Vacant and Derelict Land Task Force website for some more inspiration, and also the Land Rights and Responsibility Statement that can help encourage this proactive estate management, particularly as we change the way we use buildings as a result of obviously the last year and a half. I would encourage you to look at those resources.
Thank you. And that takes us to 1 minute till 25 past. So, thank you, everybody. Thank you to all of the speakers today, for Ali MacDonald and Andrea behind the scenes, making sure that this event has run smoothly. And the link will remain live with resources available for people to download afterwards. And the Mentimeter question is going to be here again. There's a second question asking all of you who've taken part today and listened to this webinar, what support might help you to deliver the principles that have been described in our webinar discussion today by the various examples and from around the country. So I think today, there's been some really lively conversation in the chat. There's work going on around all of the NHS estates who have been part of the meeting today, but that isn't exhaustive. It's really just been representative of the speakers who've been able to make it today. The estate is important for us, and the recognition of the benefits that our estates can bring to the communities that the NHS serve is much more apparent, and perhaps that's also a legacy from lockdown, and just understanding the benefits that the green spaces around us, whether they're part of an NHS estate or whether they're other elements of the green space in our community, the benefits that they can bring. We're going to look at the results. Okay, so here we go. This is the Mentimeter results live as we speak. So what support would help? It looks as though people are saying a range of different things, and actually that does make sense, because we all are coming from slightly different backgrounds. So for some individuals, it's going to be more focused events and workshops. For others, perhaps web pages with resources. So that's really helpful to understand. But I think as well as that, just the chat conversation that we've shared just now shows that there's an appetite for people to have ongoing conversations and to know who to make links with in their local areas. And for those who are part of the planning world within our NHS estate, that they would benefit from learning from each other about their own paths in terms of contracts and assessing how those are taken forward, but also the on the ground, how do you do it in terms of some of the use of our green estate for paths, for exercise for patients, all of those different elements together. Oh, and we're definitely getting more for focused events and workshops now creeping forward as well. So this, as we said at the beginning, today's webinar is a start of a conversation. It wasn't ever going to conclude things, absolutely, but there are a range of different resources that individuals can make use of, and really learning about Scottish land rights and responsibilities as a framework that can support the conversations and support our NHS estate to think about how they can contribute more deliberately about the health and wellbeing and environmental benefits from the places where our health service is based, as well as obviously the service provision, which is the more front end of what we do. And Andrea, I think at this point, do you want to share the evaluation link? Because there's also going to be an evaluation link that we really would like you to fill in, and so that we can make sure that for future virtual events we're capturing the things that people want to hear about, and also giving time to enough of the questions, because I get a sense today if we were all in a conference this could have filled a whole day, and it does feel harder to have these discussions in the virtual world, but it also lets us welcome each other and have without having to travel, and also thinking about reducing our carbon footprint. So there are pros and cons, but thank you everybody for taking part today. And I wonder also if Ali, do you want to say anything, or are you quite content in the background there? Maybe quite happy to be quiet. But anyway, Alison MacDonald from Public Health Scotland, who's been absolutely integral to pulling things together today and organising this event. Really grateful for your input, and to our colleagues Gemma and Kathie from the Scottish Land Commission for steering us through this new way of looking at things from an NHS perspective. Ali, do you want to say hello and goodbye?
I would just like to thank you very much indeed, Joy, for your training of the event and for the participants who have given us who have illustrated so effectively exactly what as an NHS organisation we can do to support our communities in a number of different ways. Thank you all very much for attending today, and thank you all for your participation.
Thank you.